What is your top priority for the city of Coquitlam over the next few years, and how will you work to address or improve the issue?
Some would say my top priority is mental health, but really the biggest, most impactful reality that Coquitlam residents face is still the housing crisis. With no question that we are doing more than pretty much any other municipality on a per capita basis. We're generating more rental housing and more affordable rental housing and more below market rental housing than any other community per capita. But we need more communities to do, as we're doing. We actually had the housing minister last week praising Coquitlam and asking that other communities start to emulate some of our policies, because we can't tackle the housing crisis unless we're all rowing in the same direction, and that every municipality and every agency of government all works in the same direction. And we can do that. We can increase the supply of housing, but recall that this province saw 100,000 people move here last year, and the province built enough housing for 2/3 of them. That didn't help, obviously. So we need to continue to work hard, and every municipality has to pull their fair share.
Two major things that are keeping me up at night. Not only what Mr. Stewart just mentioned about housing, but also making sure that City Hall is responsive to every single resident. I mentioned in my opening statement that I've been listening, and I think that that is a superpower for anybody in a position of power and authority, is to listen to the concerns of people. It is no surprise that 25% turnout to local elections, because of the fact that I believe we have missed the mark. When it comes to leadership at City Hall, we want to make sure that we're hearing the concerns and the stories of people. From a position of power and public trust, as the mayor's position is, there needs to be collaboration. As board chair of Douglas College, we've identified with my colleagues that we needed student housing. Now, that's a city matter, it's a provincial matter, but does post-secondary have an opportunity? Absolutely. The highest and the biggest investment from the provincial government just happened last month with 808 Royal, where we're now going to be welcoming students, affording housing on campus. It took me to go to Victoria to meet with Minister Kang and highlight the importance of not only this issue, but also the opportunity.
Douglas College, we've been at Douglas College Board probably 7 times over the last decade, urging them to build some rental housing for students on campus. The housing that was just built or just announced in New Westminster is what we need in Coquitlam as a parcel of land. Unfortunately, it's not local government. We don't own it. It's the province that owns it, and it's the college that has to advocate for that housing. And it would help solve many of the challenges that we face.
The housing crisis is a crisis. I think as you look across the stage, everybody on this platform is passionate about housing. I think the missed opportunity is not pointing fingers at which level of government can we blame, but rather how do we use that position of power to bring people together, to convene. It was brought up at a barbecue about a couple of weeks ago, somebody asking, with the Metro Vancouver mayors, particularly the Tri-City mayors, do you collaborate, do you meet on a regular basis? And the answer that was presented was, we haven't met for 7 years. Now there's 7 too long years of issues that need the mayors to actually advocate.
As the mayor of the city of Coquitlam, what will be your superpower?
I think the superpower of any person in a position of authority is to listen and to find ways to collaborate. The city of Coquitlam has a growing number of seniors. We are not a designated age-friendly city, a designation that's designated by the BC Ministry of Health. We have neglected our youth for far too long. 30% of residents of Coquitlam are under the age of 24. We have not created spaces for young people to feel like they belong, so they can stop looking at their screens and look up and connect into other people's eyes. When I decided to run, I met with Chief Ed Hall to encourage me to run. I wanted to hear him. Would he endorse me as a mayoral candidate? And he said to me, Adele, we've never had a mayoral candidate or a candidate at all to come and ask us permission. City to nation partnership is critical. It is part of the important role of listening. And I believe that is important and a pivotal point when you're looking for a position as a mayor of a city. And finally, mental health.
Actually, I think Adele, I agree with his first one, because absolutely you have to listen in this job. It's about that. But mine will be the ability to have empathy. Those who know the story of, I'm glad my wife's here with us, because our family went through the realities of the gaps of mental health treatment in this province. We saw the challenges that families can face. And you really come to a better understanding and an ability to listen better when you've faced those kinds of realities. And we're lucky our daughter is doing much better now. She's graduated as a psychiatric nurse. But the challenges that so many other families face from mental health and from all kinds of other realities We need to listen as a community. We need to do what we can, and I commit to continuing to do that.
Residents don't expect their mayor to solve every problem. They expect their mayor to listen to residents and build a responsive city hall. I believe in the inspirational power of politics, collaborative and hopeful politics that lifts people up and instills trust in the public when it comes to their elected representatives. I believe that that is why we're all gathered here tonight, to share in that vision and responsibility. Coquitlam, I would be honored to serve as your next mayor. Thank you so much.
I want to talk about building consensus. This council has done a great job. We have worked hard to make sure that we identify issues, work through them, and work together. And I think that's a strength that we showed the rest of the province and lots of councils that are looking at us and saying, how do they do that? So I really applaud all these folks that have put their names forward. It's really important, so thanks. Most important, please vote.
One of the things that I really want to champion is around some of our most marginalized groups in Coquitlam. I want to talk specifically about homelessness in Coquitlam. I've been a member of the Homelessness and Housing Task Group for a number of years, and there's so much more work for us to do here in this community. These are often our brothers, our sisters, our family members that grew up in this community and are living unhoused. We have a lot more to do to bring shelter space to Coquitlam. We have a shelter currently servicing the entirety of the Tri-Cities that is bursting at the seams. As a city councillor, I want to advocate for some of those folks who have been the most marginalized and to get some more shelter space for those to get housing, because we know getting a roof over someone's head is the best way for them to get their life back on track and to get healing and mental health support.
I think Matt touches the homelessness piece. We saw 3030 Gordon open in 2014. Great. The plan was that people would come in there, spend some time in transition next stage housing. That hasn't been there yet. We're starting to see it. We've got a partnership with Share 43 Housing over in Coquitlam that'll see 20 shelter rate units, 50 rent geared to income rentals, and then 30 lower end market rentals. That's the type of creativity we need to bring across the city. If we truly want to address the affordability crunch, we need to ensure that we're creating the environment across the spectrum, housing for our kids to move out into that's affordable, housing for those folks that are marginalized, that need that additional supports. And that's partnerships with our provincial government. That's getting our feds to actually put permanent money into housing, not just loans to build it, but actual permanent investments.
Just recently, Mr. Kennedy came out and had a committee with developers and the government, and they're responsible for lack of housing was to blame the cities for not doing enough to move housing along, that we were not approving fast enough, we were charging too many fees, and we were creating too many regulations. Mind you, most of the regulations we have are through the province.
Right now we're encouraging high densities around the SkyTrains, rapid transit, but we also need to encourage gentle densities without seriously impact the environment, the neighborhood.
I was knocking on doors on Regan Street in Coquitlam and talking to residents, and I talked to not one, not two, but 3 different families that had adult children at home, and they had a lot that could have the capacity for 4 units. And all 3 of those families told me that they wanted to redevelop into a 4-plex, but the zoning would not allow them to. I would advocate at the city hall level, at the city council, to expand Coquitlam's Housing Choices program beyond the southwest corner of the city to cover the entire city.
On council, we do have a Housing Choices program, which allows for lots to be split into either the size lot for 3 small homes, 4 small homes on the lots. We have worked hard at laneway housing and other types of small types of housing in our city. So we are stepping in and trying to create as many choices for people in different forms of housing as we can. So we are working on that. We've been done that in Millardville. You have to be careful as you move forward on these type of initiatives to make sure that the community that you're doing this in, it works and fits for everybody, that there's not a overcrowding of people with parking and everything in these areas. So when we start the program Housing Choice, we took an area, we wanted to see how successful it's going to be before we move it to the rest of the community and around. But we do have a program for multiple choices of housing. And the other thing we did in Coquitlam is we put a cap on the size of housing of 5,500 square feet, nothing over. We got away from those large 6, 7, 11,000 square foot houses.
I have a 20-year-old daughter and an 18-year-old son, and I really and truly hope they can stay in Coquitlam, or at least here in the Tri-Cities, stay local. It breaks my heart that there's ads recruiting young people to move to Alberta because it's cheaper there. I collect things for refugee families, and just in the last couple of weeks I've taken furniture from families, young people moving to Alberta. And so that breaks my heart, and I'm going to keep, we have an affordable housing strategy that we implemented in 2015, and the city now has more rental and more affordable housing in stream than we had for decades prior. It's a living, breathing document, so we keep adjusting it and making amends to it. I will keep advocating for very efficient land use. My sister's subdividing a lot in peachland right now, and she's building backyard houses for each of her sons, for my nephews. That might be a more creative way to use our land in the future so our families can stay together and stay here in Coquitlam.
I think that the key to delivering affordable housing in our communities is partnerships. It's about partnerships with the provincial government. We actually have Selena Robinson sitting in the audience, and when it was her portfolio, she was delivering unprecedented quantities of housing in our region. So, but partnerships with provincial government, with nonprofit groups. It's about cities using levers, planning levers, about the reduction of development cost charges, about fast-tracking applications, about really looking at where you might consider inclusionary zoning, and there's all of those things available. Thank you.
We can continue to be a bedroom community for the rest of Metro Vancouver, or we can be a thriving city in our own right where our residents can live, work, and play. If we choose the latter, we need to ensure sustainable development of complete affordable neighborhoods that meet the needs of a diverse and growing population. This means offering a mix of housing alternatives, including affordable housing for seniors, families, and the most vulnerable. This means having a complete range of goods and services in our neighborhoods, along with the associated good-paying jobs.
I'm proud of my record on council. We've faced a lot of challenges, we're going to face more. I was there when we brought in the cold weather map program for the homeless. I support the shelter in Coquitlam to a lot of opposition. I'm proud of where we're at on rental housing. We have 10,000 market rentals in the system. We have over 2,000 below and non-market in the system.
As it stands right now, the provincial government overhauled our campaign financing regulations. Is it perfect? No. But right now, as an individual, you are allowed to donate up to $1,200. Whether you're a union member, a developer, a business owner, gas station, or an ordinary person, if you have $1,200 to donate to a candidate you believe in, under the law right now, it's legal. It's been a struggle to raise money. I have to honestly believe that the councillors that are sitting there, their integrity is not for sale. You have to be able to work with the development community, you have to be able to work with your community to solve the issues. And if good candidates can't raise the money to run, you're not going to have a rich and vibrant, diverse pool of candidates to choose from.
Well, I would like to say that I pledge to not take any money from developers. And I think the other candidates should do the same thing as well to make it a level playing field. And because it's kind of a gray area, right? We don't know if this is having undue influence on the councillors. And I just think that people should declare if they're taking this money during the campaign. And if they're not, if they're making a pledge like me, that they're not taking the money, then I think it makes those people look better. And I know it's expensive, I'm having problems actually raising money, but I pledge not to take any money from developers, and I'm just taking it from regular people, and that's my position.
Previous candidates said that, a lot of them said that they do not take development donations. I don't either. That it does not affect their decision-making on city council. I believe them. However, there is an extra layer that needs to be done here. That it's not just that it affects them, that they need to be perceived and believed to be impartial. And if you take donations from developers, that perception and belief may not be there.
In my last campaign 4 years ago, in this campaign, all the money I've raised has come from individuals that I've known and built relationships with over my 44 years in the community. But to touch one point on what Ben mentioned, sadly though it is about money, we have a civic mail-out that for some candidates, whether it be due to lack of opportunity or lack of planning, that civic mail-out can be a barrier for candidates participating because When people get their package, they think, oh, these are the camps that are running, not realizing there may be individuals that couldn't afford to get in the mail out.
Yeah, I would say money is important for all campaigns because there are so many expenses that we have to do, like Rob mentioned, the mail out, signs and advertising and everything. But still, I think that there should be no developer money in civic campaigns because it will make it more transparent and people will know what is happening.
I'd like to put a finer point on that idea of campaign financing. If you look at the last election, 2018, there was various, the metric I look at is dollars per vote. So how much did you raise divided by how many votes you got, that equals how many dollars per vote that was directed towards your vote. And we went from over $4 with Steve Kim to the last and most efficient dollars per vote was myself, 77 cents per vote. So again, I would push back on the fact that you need lots of money to run for office.
I think what's really important is we have to show that there is hope for our future. Mayor Stewart talks about mental health, it affects all of us. But I understand that a lot of our young people today, they feel a bit overwhelmed with our climate and climate change and sort of the changes in the weather, and it's gloom and doom. And so I think we need to embrace clean energy projects. We have to show that there is options out there. It's not going to happen overnight. We have to inspire hope.
We are fighting climate change, and I think we need to move to clean energy. So I'm very glad to see the Coquitlam City has approved its first environmental sustainability plan, ESP, with the goal to reduce the GHG emission levels and achieve the carbon neutrality by 2050. I think that's the direction we need to go.
I feel that any dollar we make from the sales of fossil fuels, from any development in that way, should be sent back directly, and I think our senior governments should put that into their budgeting tools and say, every dollar that we get from LNG, we get from any of our energy sales, will go into developing green energy.
I go back to what Adele Damar mentioned, that we need to get closer to the people. What was the last time anybody at home received a survey from Coquitlam City and Council? Don't get me wrong, these are my friends. So, but I believe that we need to hear people better than before. Give them data, ask their opinion. That's what I think that people are asking me when I'm talking and knocking on doors. They say, never come to us, nobody asks us any question. I believe that we need to count on people better than before. A lot of people are having a lot of knowledge that they can share with us.
I'm very proud of our environmental sustainability plan, and I think that we are doing a lot of things in the city to mitigate climate change with the streamside protection, the EV charging, micro-mobility. There's a curbside giveaway event this weekend. That's something I brought to the council table. That's just to keep more things out of the landfill. We have the anti-idling bylaw in place now, which is also something that I brought forward. So we can keep doing what we can do to protect our environment and value it and show that there's hope for the future and keep embracing green energy.
So we need to protect our environments. So we need to attract more green technology to Coquitlam, like solar panels, heat pumps, electric vehicles, and stuff like that. And I totally agree with Ali's opinion. We need a consultation with our residents and ask for their opinions on this kind of important issue.
I think that as we are plagued by atmospheric rivers, heat domes, and any other manner of the effects of climate change, we really have to get serious about tree protection and also tree planting. The magnificent species that we see in Riverview and around the community, these trees have been growing there for, in some cases, hundreds of years. We are so lucky to have them. The power of a tree that really absorbs the carbon in the atmosphere, that cleans the air, is something that we are dependent on moving into the future. So working on the Climate Action Committee with Metro Vancouver for the past 3 years, this is something that we're looking at, but it's also the planting.
I want to talk about this in terms of protection of parks. I'll use Monday Park as an example. If you go to Monday Park, it has a wonderful canopy. And during the recent heat dome, we've seen how important that these canopies are. We need to plant more trees. I mean, the science is that research indicates that planting more trees absorbs a lot of carbon, and this is something we need to keep doing. We can develop a plan. I know the city right now has planted numerous trees and has a plan to plant more, but I think that's something that we have to continue on with. And I think protection of trees is extremely important.
One of the first political issues that came to my mind as a child was the removal of trees. As I watched from my balcony, empty lots being de-treed in Coquitlam in order to make way for housing. Now, housing is important, so we need to be able to do that. But we have to find a way to provide housing while still protecting the important tree canopy in our city, which provides cooling in the summer and carbon sequestration. We can't replace mature trees with small trees that we're replanting. Protection is first, but we also have to have a sensible policy that doesn't get in the way of people redeveloping housing. We can have buildings and trees side by side. It's possible, and we need to protect the forest that we still have in the urban setting. Thank you.
The canopy is quite important. We need to plant more trees. We have a robust park environment in this city, and we need to make sure that education comes first when people start exploring our parks, so they know when they go into our parks that they're not going to damage anything. We should also go after people who cut down trees in their households and go up to get the bylaw officer, really find the people who cut down trees that aren't necessarily need to be cut down. The canopy is the important part. Plant more trees in the heavy concrete jungle areas, because that's where the heat is really radiating, and that's generally where the underprivileged tend to live.
I think cities play a huge role in this because 80% of Canadians live in urban centers. And that's where we can really make lofty changes. I talked about youth earlier, and I think an amazing collaboration would be between SD 43 and the City of Coquitlam with youth representatives from middle and secondary schools that are tasked with the Student Advisory Sustainability Committee, because our youth will help us make courageous changes, and that is the thing that is needed.
I know we're talking about canopies, but I think it's larger than this. We also need to support projects in our community around environmental issues and support initiatives as well. But the key factor is to also have budgetary support within the budget within City Hall. The other thing I'd like to mention is we can do so much more at City Hall. I know City Hall recently has charging stations, and I think those sorts of things need to continue on within our city.
I think it's really important that we have a policy that addresses how we build our city and the buildings and the infrastructure around it, and make sure that it's the best for the environment, including urban forests, and also looking at the building materials and processes that we use to make sure that there's not undue carbon emissions and destruction of our forests in British Columbia and around the world.
It should be a partnership with education, and we should get our children learning at a very young age. We can plant greenhouses and community gardens in some of our schools. We can have bee boxes and have that environmental progress take place. We need to educate. They will then protect the trees in the future going forward.
We definitely cannot ignore innovative technology when we're talking about our lives for tomorrow. We're talking about the environmental social governance. We're talking about sustainability. We cannot do that without green technology. So I think as a city, we have been doing things one way for so many years. But now is the time that we need to be innovative and we need to be creative in how we think. And we recently had a program here in Coquitlam where we had a competition for innovative minds to come in and do their projects or pitch their projects to say, this is what I would like to do, in order to improve things in the city. And definitely we need to provide that space as a city and as a governance body so that we can provide that space to be creative and innovative.
Yes, with green technology, I think it's extremely important that the city adopts green technology as a way to operate the city and City Hall and other aspects of City Hall. I also think it's important, if we're going to be looking at green technology initiatives, that we're very serious about having a budget item for it, because we can always talk about lots of different projects and green innovations, but I think it's important that we're actually looking at how we're going to fund that within a budget structure. Thank you.
I'm in favor of the solar panels. Believe me, if the price is right, I promise him here right at front of my dear Senator Robinson that I'm going to put on my roof. So then do it then. I think we should stay open to the possibilities out there. And it starts from schools as well. Let the students know what is important. They take it home. They talk to their families, and families are even more open to understand that, hey, things are being changing. So we need to, again, in this area, go a little bit of education, but we need to stay open to the possibilities. Again, there's going to be a lot of research. Again, we can take a model of other countries and to see what they have done because it may or may not work for us. So we have to study a lot about it before make final decision. And of course, we need some money for it.
Yeah, I think for encouraging green technologies, you've got to be smart about it. You have to work in partnership with both hydro, the provincial government, because the city can't afford to pay the cost themselves. Perhaps there's incentive programs offered to the provincial government or through places such as hydro. We also need to look at experts in the field, see what kind of green technology makes sense in our community. Obviously, nuclear power will not work in Coquitlam, and neither will run a river, but I know there are technologies out there that we can bring to our city.
When I came to Coquitlam and moved here, this was a very different looking community, but it is today. Today we've become a multicultural community, and that's a real opportunity for us to share in the customs, share in celebrations, and I think that we're a richer community for that. Today, almost 50% of the people in Coquitlam were not born to an English-speaking family, and I think that makes us all a better community. I'm really pleased with how this community has embraced multiculturalism. The Dumpling Festival just recently was held, was one of our most successful festivals that we've put together. Our multicultural community is doing really good work, and I think that as a community we're richer for this, and I think that we also have to make sure that we all together stand up against this kind of racism, and some of that may involve bringing in RCMP and when the cases are there that we have to step up. But I think the most important thing to do is to stand together.
Well, certainly this one hits home deeply with me. Someone who was born here in the Lower Mainland and raised in Coquitlam. Certainly our demographics and our city has grown into a very multicultural city. I've spent the better part of my adult life working to build bridges and create mutual understanding. So when you see these acts happening, it really hits home for me. So for me, certainly I've been speaking out. If you look on my Facebook and on council, when Heritage Month hits, I'm out there speaking, and anything that happens as they happen during the, I guess every day, I know that everyone is out there denouncing these types of acts. To bring it back to mutual understanding, I certainly, just as Councillor Hodge mentioned, the Dumpling Festival is one that hit home for me. I saw it as an opportunity to build on the message of anti-Asian hate, but also to create mutual understanding.
Clearly, one of the worst things that happened in Coquitlam in the last 4 years was that anti-Asian and anti-Chinese racism that we experienced. First, I want to acknowledge the Chinese and the greater Asian community for the grace and strength with which they handled it. As someone like myself, I can't even imagine what the community and members go through. So again, the grace and strength. For me, the key is awareness. Thankfully, we have wonderful multicultural settings in our schools, and they're doing great work in our schools. We need to make sure we have explicit awareness campaigns at schools, and the city has a specific role as well, because most of our population isn't in school at a given time. So an awareness campaign across the city would be one of my key solutions. And just a couple last things. Our Chinese community actually represents 26% of residents in Coquitlam, so they're a wonderful and large part of our community. And last but not least, I want to acknowledge Harvey Su, our only candidate of Chinese descent, and Steve Kim, because they would have been the only two people on the stage tonight that would have had to deal with this. So thank you to both of those gentlemen.
Yeah, I guess maybe I could just use this time to highlight the more work that we need to do around equity and diversity at large here in the city. I mean, we know still that this is an incredibly diverse community, but often when we look at the council table, it still doesn't quite reflect how diverse the community actually is. We have an indigenous population in Coquitlam. We have a considerable Chinese, Korean, and Iranian population. And one thing I do want to say too is we clearly made great strides. I think we have such a more diverse slate of candidates here running in this election than we have in the past, and I think that speaks to the work we've been doing at the city and in the community.
Earlier we heard one of the candidates criticize us for a hiring that we made during the pandemic. One of that positions was a manager of equity, diversity, and inclusion, because coming out of that pandemic, this city and our council recognized that that was an important hire and that we want to move this community forward. And the other one was a piece of somebody to look after Indigenous reconciliation. So this is a city council recognizes that we need to move forward in this area, and we are, and we're doing that with the support of our community.
We have incredible cultural hub potential from the Korean community, the Chinese community, the Persian community, and also based on the heritage of the French community here. We can bring together stakeholders, small businesses, and others, entertainment, however it might be, and we can actually create and foster some understanding over the long term by getting everyone involved in our community.
I think one thing I love to highlight is just more and more events that are not only multicultural but focused on one culture, and then others from other cultures can go to those events. So just last weekend the Tri-City Chinese Community Society hosted an event at the library for all the candidates, and it was wonderful, and I was taken aback by the energy and the charisma in the room. And we need more events like that where people of different backgrounds are coming together. So the Dumpling Festival was mentioned, but I'd love to see more of those opportunities. So not just we need those multicultural ones, but we also need more narrow ones that other cultures can come and share and learn.
I believe that my 2 kids should be able to look up and to see themselves represented. I think we need to start very, very young. We need to engage our young people. We need to show them how our democracies work. We need to engage them in voting in the schools. We need to show them the importance of everything that we do in municipal, provincial, and federal governments. If we can instill in them that sense that it is an important thing to do, it is a worthwhile endeavor, then I believe they will follow into those pursuits and you will see it open up more and more. We need some leaders. We do need members of our LGBTQ community to come forward. We need people of color. We need people with disabilities to come forward. And I would just love to see that happen so they could blaze the trail, and then we can follow in and educate our younger people to respect that life.
One of the other things that we are trying to do is we are trying to encourage more women to run, and this was something that our council looked at this year. We brought in a couple of policies to make it easier for women that might have to take a leave of absence for having children and other things. So we are aware that we're trying to bring down the barriers. I wish there were more women running here. I'm pleased that 4 people have stepped up to do it. But as Carl said, we also have to make sure that we have a wide diversity of candidates that run. And I'm pleased to see that we are getting there. If you look at a picture of this city council, 60 years ago, or even 20 years ago, it was very different. It was unusual to have even one woman on council. So I think our council is becoming more representative of the community that we serve, but I think it's important that we reach out to all members of our community, whether it is the LGBTQ community, whether it's women, whether it's seniors. We need more people.
I have worked on campaigns of many women and helped them get elected, and we just have to make it easier for them to get involved in politics. And I really believe that we have to help them fund their campaigns and make them feel comfortable in the council spaces. Sometimes it's like an old boys club. I guess I'm an old boy myself, but we have to make it more comfortable in the council chambers for the women to feel free to express their opinions and not be sometimes bullied or something like that by other councillors. It has to be a diverse space for all people.